I grew up thinking I was a burden. Turns out I was someone else's second chance, never delivered. I found the letter the day after the funeral. It was tucked inside a book she knew I'd never open unless I had to. 101 budget soups for single parents. Fitting. Mom always had a weird sense of irony. It was a plain white envelope, yellowed at the edges. On the front, in her precise, looping handwriting, were the words, "For after I'm gone." Inside was a single sheet. "No, I love you. No, I'm proud of you." Just one brutal line written in the middle of the page. "Your real father was never told you exist." That was it. I sat at the kitchen table in the same chair I'd occupied every morning from middle school to high school and stared at that sentence like it would change if I just kept reading it enough times. I always assumed my dad was dead. That was the lie Mom told when I was 8 and asked about the guy who wasn't there at parent-teacher night. "He passed when you were a baby. You wouldn't remember him anyway." That lie stuck. I repeated it when kids asked. Believed it because what kid wants to imagine they were abandoned? But now I was sitting in our silent house, the smell of her lavender lotion still clinging to the throw blanket on the couch, and everything I thought I knew was unraveling. I read the line again. "Your real father was never told you exist." No name. No return address. Not even a clue. Just a nuclear bomb detonated in one sentence. I didn't even cry. I just got up, went to the bathroom, and stared at my face in the mirror. I tried to see him, whoever he was. My nose? Maybe. Eyes? Hard to say. But what did it matter? Whoever this man was, he hadn't just been absent. He'd been erased. Kept in the dark. And me? I'd been raised on a lie so complete I hadn't even known to question it. Until now. 3 hours later, I was in the attic, digging through Mom's old boxes like a man possessed. Every old photo, every tax return, every stray receipt got scanned for clues. Nothing. Until I found a shoebox labeled Zach III. Inside were my baby teeth, gross, some Polaroids, and a faded hospital bracelet with the name Z. Langston on it. Langston? That wasn't our last name. Ours was Miller. Always had been. I pulled out one of the Polaroids. Mom holding me as a baby, standing in front of a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with sandy hair and a nervous smile. He looked young, early 20s, maybe. A hospital hallway blurred behind them. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, Zach's Day 1. May 14th, 1994. The man wasn't labeled, but the date matched my birthday. That had to be him. I took the photo to the light, studying every inch of his face. There was something about his eyes too familiar to ignore. They looked like mine. I Googled everything. Langston plus May 1994 plus birth record. Hours of dead ends and government database rabbit holes later, I struck gold. A scanned page of a 1994 St. Mary's birth log. My name, Zachary Langston. Mother, Melissa Miller. Father, left blank. So Mom hadn't changed my name to Miller after getting married or anything. She had always used Miller. Hers. Which meant Langston came from him. Whoever he was. Now I had a surname. A starting point. I messaged one of those genealogy sites and paid extra for a Rush family tree skin based on the info I had. It would take 2 days. 2 days. 2 days of pacing the living room and rereading her letter like it might morph into a real explanation. 2 days of wondering why she didn't just tell me. 2 days of wrestling with a thought I couldn't shake. What kind of person hides a whole parent from their kid and a kid from a whole parent? The package from the genealogy service arrived exactly 47 hours later. Inside was a partial family tree built off public records and the Langston name in our region. And there he was. Elliot Langston. Age 52. Lives 2 hours away in Portland. No mention of a wife. 1 business license. And a social media account that hadn't been updated in 3 years, but the profile pic? Same man. Just older. Same eyes. Same nervous smile. My hands shook as I scrolled through what little info I could find. He was a woodworker. Ran a small carpentry business out of his garage. 1 Yelp review called him the quiet type but kind, really takes his time. I stared at that screen until my eyes burned. My whole life I thought I was unwanted. Turns out I was just hidden. And now I had to decide. Do I knock on a stranger's door with 28 years of silence behind me? Or do I let him live the rest of his life never knowing the truth? Because I wasn't sure which was worse. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done living in the dark. And I was going to find out why she kept him a secret. I didn't sleep the night I found the letter. Just sat in the dark, reading that one line over and over. Your real father was never told you exist. By morning I had a name, Elliot Langston. A man living 2 hours away in Portland with a woodworking shop and a Yelp page that described him as quiet, kind, doesn't say much but listens real good. I stared at his photo on the screen. Same jawline. Same eyes. eyes I'd seen in the mirror for years without knowing where they came from. So I drove. The house was smaller than I expected. Cozy. White trim, lopsided mailbox, and a wind chime that clinked softly in the breeze. A dog dozed on the porch. I waited until my hands stopped shaking before I walked up the drive. The side garage was open, his workshop, I guessed. The scent of sawdust hit me like a time capsule. I knocked on the frame. He looked up from a lathe, wiping his hands on a rag. "Hey there. Can I help you?" I swallowed. "Are you Elliot Langston?" He nodded slowly, confused. "Yeah, I think. I might be your son." His expression didn't change at first. Just confusion. Then I held up the photo, my mom, holding baby me with him standing behind her. I'd found it in the attic. He took it with trembling hands. Studied it like it was a map to something lost. "Where did you get this?" "My mom. Melissa Miller." His eyes widened. The name hit him like a gut punch. He lowered himself onto a nearby stool. "She never told me," he said. "I swear to God I didn't know. It wasn't serious. Just a summer thing." She left without a word. "She left me a letter after she died," I said. "Said you never knew. That's all." He stared at the photo again, voice barely above a whisper. "She didn't." Jesus. I stood there, awkward and exhausted, unsure what came next. A hug? A rejection? Instead, he looked at me and asked, "What's your name?" "Zach." He repeated it once, then again, like he was trying to make it real. And then he did something I wasn't prepared for. He pulled me into a hug. Hesitant, shaky, but real. And it broke something open in me I didn't know I'd been holding. We talked for hours. He asked questions like he was trying to speedrun fatherhood. "What was your favorite subject? Did you play sports? Are you close with anyone? What music do you like?" I told him everything I could between long silences. My mom's laugh. My part-time job at the record store. My broken arm in 4th grade. He told me about the dog, Rusty, his divorce, his love of working with his hands. "I always thought I might be a dad," he said once. "But I never knew I already was." There was something in his voice I didn't know how to name. Grief, maybe. Regret. Before I left, he handed me something. A folder. Inside was a single page, aged and slightly torn. No return address. It read, "You were almost a father. She chose not to tell you." That's it. No signature. No date. Just that. "I got this in the mail maybe 10 years ago," he said. "I thought it was a cruel joke. Maybe a mistake. I never figured out who sent it." My stomach dropped. "It wasn't my mom?" He shook his head. "Didn't look like her handwriting. And she was long gone by then. Moved without a trace. So someone else knew." We both sat there quiet. The sun was going down. "I don't know what happens next," I said. "I'm not here to blow up your life." "You didn't," he said. "You just lit it back up." He walked me to the car. Rusty followed, tail wagging like it already knew me. As I pulled away, I glanced at the photo one more time. There we were. A ghost family I never knew existed. And now a new question haunted me. If she didn't send that letter, who did? I drove home with a weird sense of weightlessness, like my life had cracked open and no one else could see the fracture. Elliot, my father, wasn't who I expected, and yet he was. Quiet. Worn down. But kind. The kind that feels earned, not performed. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. The one that said, "You were almost a father. She chose not to tell you." If it wasn't from my mom, then who? I started digging. Old school style. I went through her storage boxes, old yearbooks, anything that might hold names she'd scribbled and forgotten. The attic didn't offer much, but the basement, her memory cave, held gold. In a faded green shoebox marked letters, I found a bundle of notes bound with a ribbon. Most were from friends or coworkers. But one stood out, folded in half, no envelope, just a first name written in red ink. Claire. Inside was a birthday card from 1995, signed, "You did the right thing." He would have been a good dad, but not the right one. Love, see? My hands went cold. Claire. The handwriting didn't match my mom's. It didn't match Elliot's either. But it felt familiar, like I'd seen it somewhere before. I ran upstairs, pulled out the letter Elliot gave me, the anonymous one, and compared the C's. Same curve. Same tiny flourish at the top. Claire had sent the letter. 10 years ago. Long after Mom was gone from his life. I checked the back of the card. No return address. But there was a phone number. I stared at it for a long time, then dialed. "Hello?" A woman's voice. Tired. Measured. "Hi, is this Claire?" Pause. "Who's calling?" "My name's Zach. Melissa Miller's son." Another pause. Then a sharp inhale. "Oh my God. You knew her." "I was her best friend. Once. A long time ago." I stepped outside, heart pounding. "Did you know she had a kid?" Silence. "I know you sent Elliot a letter." Another silence. But this one was heavier. Guiltier. She sighed. "Yes. I did. Why? Because I wanted him to know. Eventually. But she wouldn't let me tell him when you were born. She was terrified. Of what? Of being tied to him. Of becoming her own mother. Of screwing you up. She thought cutting him out was the cleanest way. She never told me any of that. She wouldn't, Claire said. She thought secrets were safer than regrets. There was a long silence between us. Then she said, you found him, didn't you? Yeah. Yesterday. A soft exhale. Good. He deserves to know you. You both deserved the chance. I wanted to be mad at her. Claire had known all this time. She could have told me. Or told him. Or something. But instead I said, do you know why she picked the name Zach? Claire chuckled faintly. It was his middle name. Elliot Zachary Langston. She said it was her compromise, her way of giving you a piece of him without giving him everything. I sat down hard on the porch steps. I'd carried his name my whole life. I just never knew it. Before we hung up, Claire asked, do you hate her for it? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because the truth was so messy it couldn't fit in a yes or no. Later that night, I texted Elliot. Me, hey. Random question. What's your middle name? He replied in under a minute. Elliot, Zachary. Why? I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, overwhelmed by a strange mix of grief, gratitude, and something new. Belonging. But as I got ready for bed, something else gnawed at me. If Claire knew the truth for decades and Elliot never did, then who else had my mother told? And more importantly, what else had she kept buried? The next morning, I pulled up the voicemail Claire left me after our call. It was only 7 seconds long, but I'd listened to it 5 times already. There's one more thing I think you should know. Call me when you're ready. That kind of message doesn't leave you alone. It followed me into the shower, the grocery store, every silent minute of that day. So I called. Claire, I said, voice dry from overthinking, what's the one more thing? She didn't dance around it. Your mother wasn't just hiding Elliot. She was hiding why she kept you from him. I sat down. Okay. She thought Elliot's family would try to take you. Legally. That knocked the breath out of me. What are you talking about? She said his family was old money. Controlling. If they found out about a kid, especially one born out of wedlock, they'd use lawyers, custody hearings, whatever it took. She didn't think they'd let her keep you. I swallowed hard. But he didn't even know. He doesn't talk to his family. I know. She didn't either. But she didn't believe him. Not back then. That shifted everything. My mom didn't just ghost Elliot to be cruel. She was scared. And fear makes you selfish. Claire continued, she told me once after a bad fight with her mom that she was determined not to let anyone else decide your life. She swore you'd never end up a pawn in someone else's version of family. I hung up feeling more confused than comforted. Because yeah, it explained her choice. But it didn't excuse it. She still lied. Still robbed us of years. That night, I couldn't stop looking through the box of papers from the attic. I found a dusty binder wedged between tax forms. Inside was a list, typed, single-spaced. People to avoid, legal reasons. And there, halfway down the page, was a name. Marjorie Langston. Elliot's mother. I texted him. Me, your mom's name was Marjorie? Elliot, yeah? She passed about 5 years ago. Why? Me, did she ever know about me? 10 minutes passed. Elliot, I don't think so. But we weren't close. We had a falling out years ago. She didn't approve of much. I snapped a photo of the binder page and sent it to him. Elliot, whoa. Where did you get that? Me, my mom's files. Why was she on a legal watch list? Another pause. Then he called. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone, he said. When I was 22, I got engaged. Girl named Rachel. Marjorie loved her. Wedding was planned, announcements sent out. Then I called it off. Why? Because I met your mom. Silence. We had a whirlwind summer. She lit me up. But she was clear she didn't want to be tied to anyone long term. Said her independence was the only thing she could count on. And your mom threatened to cut me off. Said Melissa was after money. That if a child ever came from that mistake, she'd make sure custody went to someone respectable. I rubbed my face. Jesus. Yeah. I didn't think she meant it. But now seeing that document. He trailed off. She was serious, I said. He sighed. Your mom must have believed her. Which meant mom didn't ghost Elliot. She protected me. In her own fractured, paranoid way. I spent the next few days spinning. I looked through old photos with new eyes. My first birthday, just me and mom, a cupcake, no guests. My middle school graduation, no extended family, just us and a teacher who offered to take the photo. The older I got, the more I noticed the absence of anyone but her. She hadn't just raised me solo. She'd raised me hidden. And now I was left with the pieces. A dad who never got the chance. A mom who made sure of it. And a name, Zachary, that was a quiet confession she'd never said aloud. But then I made a discovery. In the back of the binder, behind some utility bills, was a sealed envelope. Handwritten. To Zach, open only if you need the whole truth. My blood ran cold. I tore it open. Inside was a letter. The first line read, "If you're reading this, then I owe you the full story of how you came to be." The letter was 4 pages long, front and back, written in Mom's looping script. The kind she used on birthday cards and post-it notes she'd leave on the fridge. "Don't forget lunch. Proud of you always, Mom." But this wasn't that version of her. This was raw, scared, brutally honest. "Zach, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you found more than I ever planned to share. I always said I'd tell you one day, but that day never came. So here's the truth. All of it." I read it on the floor of the hallway. Couldn't even make it to the couch. Just slid down the wall and read until the words started shaking in my hands. She wrote about the summer she met Elliot. How she'd just gotten out of a toxic engagement. How she hadn't been looking for anything, but he'd made her feel like she mattered. Like she wasn't broken beyond repair. He didn't try to fix me. Just saw me. That scared the hell out of me. She found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after she left. She wrote that she drove back to Portland once, sat in her car outside Elliot's shop for almost an hour, then drove away. I knew if I told him, he'd want to do the right thing. And I wasn't ready to let someone else write my story again. Then came the part that stopped me cold. When I found out his mother was asking questions, sending letters to my sister, calling my old job, I panicked. I filed to legally change your last name. I erased every trace of him I could find. Because I thought that was safer. Cleaner. Kinder. Safer. Cleaner. Kinder. I wanted to scream. Instead, I read on. She described watching me sleep as a baby, wondering what pieces of him I'd carry. How some days she saw his smile in mine and wanted to call him, but didn't. Couldn't. I was wrong. Not for keeping you, but for keeping him from you. She ended the letter the only way she could. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find the pieces I threw away. And I hope they still fit. I sat there for a long time, the letter in my lap, my chest hollowed out by all the things she never said while she was alive. That night, I drove back to Portland. Elliot answered the door in sweats, surprised. "Zach, I found something," I said. "A letter. From her. The full story." He didn't ask to read it. Just gestured me inside. Poured coffee. Sat across from me with that same steady silence I'd started to understand as his way of listening. "She was scared," I said. "Not of you. Of what loving you would cost her." He nodded slowly. "I know that fear. I lived it too." I set the letter on the table between us. "You should read it," I said. "She didn't just steal time from you. She stole the burden of having to choose." We didn't talk much after that. Just sat in the quiet, sipping coffee that went cold. But the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like a bridge. A week later, Elliot sent me a photo. It was an ultrasound dated May 1994. "She mailed this to me anonymously 28 years ago," he wrote. I kept it. Didn't know why until now. I stared at the grainy shape of myself. A smudge of life. A shadow of a chance never delivered. He kept it. All those years. And suddenly, I understood something my mom never got to say. She didn't bury the truth because she hated him. She buried it because she loved us both and didn't trust the world to be kind to either. I still didn't know what to do with that. But I knew one thing. The story wasn't over. Because the day after that photo arrived, I got an email. Subject line, "I think we might be related." The email came at 3:17 a.m. Subject, "I think we might be related from Emily.Langston89 ." The message was short. "Hi. I know this is strange, but I got a notification from the genealogy site saying we might be half-siblings. I'm not looking for anything dramatic. Just curious. My name's Emily Langston. Born 1989. My dad is Elliot. Let me know if you want to talk. No pressure. E." I read it 3 times before I moved. Half-sister. He had another kid. A daughter. And she was reaching out to me. I didn't know whether to feel flattered or like the universe was playing a very specific, very cruel joke. I didn't answer that day. Or the next. Instead, I drove back to Elliot's house. He was sanding a piece of maple on his porch when I pulled up. Rusty barked once, then settled back into a sunny patch like this was normal now. "I got an email," I said, holding out my phone. "From Emily." He froze. "Emily? She contacted you?" "Yeah. Through the DNA site." He put down the sander. "I didn't know she even used it." "You didn't tell her about me?" He shook his head. "I was going to. But I didn't know how. We're not close. Not since the divorce. Her mom kept her away a lot." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to be angry. How many people didn't know about me? How many versions of this family tree had my name erased? But I couldn't be angry. Not when I remembered the photo of that ultrasound he'd kept all these years. Not when I saw how fast he stood up, how his hands were shaking just a little. She wants to meet, I said. Should I? He didn't hesitate. Yes, you should. So I did. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. She wore a denim jacket with tiny enamel pins on the collar, her hair up in a messy bun. When she spotted me, she waved awkward, unsure. Zach, she asked. I nodded. You look like him. It's kind of spooky. We sat down, talked about everything and nothing. She was a teacher, divorced, a cat person. Grew up wondering why her dad always seemed distant, like part of him was somewhere else. Guess I know where that part was now, she said softly. I didn't even know he existed until last month, I admitted. And now there's all this. She smiled. Honestly, you're not what I expected. Is that a good thing? I think so. Before we left, she handed me a photo. A Polaroid, her as a toddler sitting on Elliot's shoulders. He looked happier than I'd ever seen him. That's the guy I remember, she said. I hope you get to know that version too. Later, I drove back to the house I grew up in. The house that used to feel like a tomb of silence. I stood in my old room, surrounded by echoes, holding that photo in one hand and Mom's letter in the other. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt full. Not fixed. Not whole. But seen. Because I'd grown up believing I was a burden, just a quiet mistake patched over with love and avoidance. But now I knew better. I wasn't an accident. I was a second chance. One that just took the long way around.